Hey, 1 2, check, check. Hey, 1 2, check, check. 1 2 3. Hey, 1 2 3, check. 1 2 3, check. Check, check, check. Hey, hey, hey. Check, check, check. I can hear it coming back through here. So we're good then? It would be better if I could get
audio from your laptop there.
Yeah, or something.
Camera's off, Dave, or?
No, the camera's on. Okay. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. There we go. Okay, so you got that and you got me. Check. Hey, 1, 2. Hey, 1, 2. Check.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Cool. That is huge. Yeah, I know. I don't know how to get out of it. Okay, I'm gonna end that. So you've got a signal coming in from the remote thing. So end the test and I'm gonna bail out.
I hope no one minds that I'm making executive decisions about this, but.
Oh, no, we're in sync. I made the same decisions over here.
Just checking in, make sure y'all are good.
Yeah, so far,
Have everything you need?
yep.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You've got your EV guys.
Yeah, they've been very helpful.
Okay, perfect, good. Is the temperature good in here for y'all?
It's fine.
It's fine, okay.
It's actually set for 67, but it can't get there, so.
It's set for 67.
It's over there.
Oh. Hmm. Probably adjust if we need to.
Yeah. Same thing. There is no leadership here. First person who shows up. Check it out.
Hmm.
OSS is fun, man. So everybody's at a peer level. Although it doesn't, it's not completely true, is it?
Not completely true. Mostly true.
Most. And pretty fortunate, never did. We never had a rejection of a PR that wasn't agreed upon. Yeah, there's always been we never had to have a vote, you know what I mean?
For what, for
For
OCI?
PRs. Yeah, no, for in container D.
Oh, yeah.
An OCI, yeah, no, that's contentious, so.
I was gonna say,
But nobody's here yet. It's just you and me, man. Sorry, I didn't mean, I need to switch context back to OCI.
yeah.
By the way, congratulations for container D 2.0.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I was really waiting for it.
What were you waiting for?
So I'm from device vendor, like GPU for the
Okay.
for inference, so I need the CDI.
You need CDI.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Which is why I'm so surprised that you guys weren't using CD. I'm happy, but I'm surprised.
I mean, I'm sure we'll adopt it, but
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems temporary to me too. Not temporary. Same pattern as what I see. So,
I don't think we added this yet, but, NRI injection for CDI devices, probably something we should do. I think we have that yet.
I thought I saw either an issue or I know it's been done. I can't.
It was done?
I know it's been done. It may not, it might be in containers.
I thought we didn't have that as a modifiable field yet.
The CDI injection.
Yeah, from an NRI plugin.
Oh, as modifiable.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like a container adjustment.
I think we pass in the annotation, so they might have been able to do it off annotations.
I mean, then it just wouldn't be CDI at that point.
Well,
That's what I'm-
CDI has two implementations, one with the actual field CDI devices. This past, but also there was an earlier version that was on annotations, both in front of us. And Kubelet generates both until it's in both cryo and container D LTS. At least that was the plan. They haven't removed the annotations yet.
Thought we hadn't done that yet, but okay.
Yeah, let me look. Let's look. Let me look at two places to see. I don't remember the list of all the containers, plugins we have already. Everybody? Hey.
Yes, ma'am.
Antonio, do you know if anybody did the CDI injector from NRI? An NRI plugin yet?
CVI?
Yeah,
No, we're not doing here. With NRI, just we just don't need CDI.
You don't need it. I was just wondering if somebody had already done it. I had this vague,
What's the time? I mean,
oh, we were just talking out loud. There it is. Yeah, we do have it.
the thing with the CDI, the problem is with NRI, I used to start to use
This
CDI.
isn't CDI though, this is just devices. So if you look at the,
CDI devices.
this isn't modifying through C, so this is likely implementing a CDI thing versus,
Yes,
um,
it's an yes,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
an NRI implementation of.
versus what I was saying, which was having it as a adjustable field.
Yes, it is not an adjustable.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yes,
saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the NRI, something that you need CDI for. The third one, I think it's all day.
Yeah, no, I think NVIDIA is using CDI right now, right? I don't think they've jumped onto the NRI.
NVIDIA's not, I don't think they've started using CDI yet.
They use CDI.
They have
Oh,
one.
they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
They use CDI exactly with the.
Not
with
yet,
the-
defined yet. In a couple of months, the production release goes out.
Yeah, that's, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so if you install NVIDIA Container Toolkit and if you have GPU in your server, you
Right,
can
with the
find
operator.
CDI manifest.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not using CDI to inject to the container runtime yet, which was
It's
the,
complicated. As far as I know, they said what CDI device want to use in environment variable, like GPU 0, it's actually CDI index for GPU, and they still use run C wrapper.
yeah, they're
to
still doing the
modify.
run C wrapper
Yeah,
thing.
to support older version of the container DM.
Which they
Yeah.
can get off once they, yeah.
Well, that's what I don't want. I want the run
Yeah,
C wrapper
please, no more
gone.
wrappers.
So.
This is why I mentioned in the proxies, no, it hurts my head.
You know, I can hear.
Sorry?
Okay.
Yeah.
But they know you, right?
Yeah.
You have to have some.
Yeah,
right,
we
nice
met
to meet you.
last year.
Okay. I knew that it sounds familiar. I'm sorry for.
Yeah.
for-
So there was a meeting for DRA in the hallway
Yeah.
last year.
Ah, yeah, we
Yeah.
took there, right,
Yeah.
right. I knew that, you know, just familiar. Okay.
I'm just trying to be sticky to this community, OCI things and DRA things.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, I hear
Brandon, are you here?
he is here.
I am here and I can hear you.
Can you can hear us then?
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Because our camera's over there, and you said that you're expecting like 15 or 20 people, we're gonna pull this table over and get you to sit on this side, so your back isn't to the
Does that-
camera,
does
if
that
that's
work?
okay with
Yep.
you. You okay with that? Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, really cool.
Do the bird sort.
Brandon, can you see us too?
I can.
Okay, good.
So could you sit on this side so that they can see? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Then you're all visible.
I just.
I'm not that offended if somebody doesn't want to face me.
What is?
I mean, we can still see the projector. It's just the camera's over on this side of the room, so. We have not a big number of people here yet, so I don't know that we need to start. Brandon, I don't know, are you planning to run the meeting like you normally do?
I'm in no rush, and if people there just want to chit chat and do a birds of a feather kind of thing, I'm perfectly fine with that. I threw some stuff on the agenda just in case we ran out of stuff to talk about.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. Tony, we never met. But we met with Guy and
Yeah, I went. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little weird. I don't know if you have access to the service desk or not, but you should get access to it and then this should be shared. I don't know if you can-
I know the people who visit the CDI devices in practice. They are counting the information. So they do it.
Yeah, you can now define a CDI device. That's a requirement.
They move it to GA.
The GA, the GA. Not just beta. It's GA, then we can consider putting it.
Let me confirm. Wait 1 second. I confirm this.
Pretty big backboard. We already have a.
The whole 1 second. This is the description. They would tell you what's the one, but let me confirm that this is
They'll remove the gate. So,
yeah, it's the CDI for device packet, CDI to.
oh,
That means that they are just, that they.
so that's not necessarily. Passing a CDI device. But. Yeah, but it is a. No,
This guy is here, this. Evan. Yeah, I was talking with. This. I know because Kevin. I know.
Yeah. So right now we support CDI by default out of the box on 2.0 and 1.7, but we have not put the code in for CDI support on 1.6.
No one.
So if anybody.
How many branches did you have?
Plus maybe. Yeah, now we've got another branch. We've got 2.0 in May
Yeah, so.
and 1.7 and 1.6, yeah.
I thought that 1.6 was.
Still got a piece to go.
The problem that. We're not just with these FPS.
We're mostly sitting on like this side because the camera's over there. That's the key of why everyone's sitting there like. Just moving. I see.
So a lot of the conversations, Brendan, are related to some recent announcements by Kubernetes that they're gonna go with LTS releases. Randy, they're working out.
Can you hear if we're not holding the show?
I can hear Mike.
I mean-
Sometimes other people are chatting and it's a little quiet, but Mike has a good voice that carries.
Because we have the mic here. Right?
This
No,
is
this-
The mic is that?
That's
Okay,
the
so
mic.
we need to pass it.
so if you want to.
Yeah, so we just giving you a heads up on some of the things that happened at Kubernetes KubeCon here, and not permanent, or it's not, proofed yet, but they will have releases, LTS releases. And it looks like those will have a 24-month lifespan now, as opposed to, just the 3.5, 1 year lifespan on non-LTS releases. So that gives us a little bit of an issue with things like OCI Run C, where, any CVEs that need to be done in Run C, for that older releases now of Kubernetes, if there's a co-related issue, like something like a cgroup C2 capability or C groups. And weren't we going to add a C groups repo to OCI?
That has, as best I can tell, it's been approved. We only have two
Approved?
TOB members that have not approved it, just Sajay and Ram. And so it's effectively approved. I was just holding off in case we are a little quick on the gun.
Yeah, we have enough votes for it to be approved. I think we can go ahead and merge it whenever, and then we just got to get the repos created, which is reaching out to Chris or Jory.
Yep. Yeah, after I saw we had the votes within like half a day, I started looking through the charter to see, do we have anything in there that says we need at least like 24 hours or 1 week or something like that for the vote? And we don't have that for the TOB.
No, we don't. We've had votes that have taken much longer than this, but I was mostly leaving it open just for now in case there was anyone that wanted to voice a different opinion. But, I don't think we need to wait too long.
Yep. I'll give Jory a ping on this one afterwards and make sure she knows that we're ready to open this up. So the C group would help out some of the Kubernetes stuff with their dependencies.
Yep.
Are the Kubernetes maintainers expecting all the other dependent projects to kind of step up for them, or are they going to be more interactive in the projects they depend on to help manage some of those releases?
But this LTS is a proposal that doesn't have a lot of consensus because, sorry, I'm Antonio. I'm not used to come to this meeting. Let me introduce. I'm TL in SIG Network and in SIG testing. And the proposal of the working group is to move to this 24 months. And the feedback from most of the representatives of the SIGs is we need to do an analysis of what that implies. That's exactly what you're saying. Okay, is Containerd being able to support this? How, I don't know, it's etcd, it's all the things. So it's not a strong statement. We need to do the math and see how much it costs and if it's feasible.
Yeah, additionally, what also discussed was instead of going with a 3 release per year, maybe stretching that out to 2 releases per year for the Kubernetes side. Again, as Antonio, it's proposals, not, nothing rock solid yet.
As pros and cons, people are always trying to get their features in, then get worried that it's going to be longer if they miss the window, and so they're forcing things in faster.
Yep. So first item on the agenda, you want to go ahead and start with that?
The few items we had on the agenda here, I threw a couple of them on just to say that TOB nominations are open. So for anybody that is a maintainer of any of the OCI projects, that form to nominate someone is open for you, and you can nominate yourself, you can nominate someone else, and that someone else doesn't necessarily have to be a maintainer themselves. So
Do we know yet if anybody that's on the list that doesn't want to continue, or I see you're on there? Are you still in?
I'm still in. I see Josh is going to try to take my seat. So he and I will battle it out. I have not spoken to VBATS, Derek, or Alexa.
I think everyone needs to be renominated anyway. So maybe they need to nominate themselves, but I don't think that we auto nominate the people that are incumbents.
We can all nominate up to 2 people. I guess this cycle, it's not it's the maintainer cycle.
Yeah, this is the maintainer cycle rather than the member cycle.
Hey,
Yeah,
Phil.
we're sitting on this side so that Brandon can see us since he's the only one remote right now.
All righty.
You never know, someone else might join in.
If anyone wants to, speak at any time, the mic on that table should work too. Just reach for it if you want to say anything. So we did TOB nominations. Do we want to talk about the C group repo other than what we already did, which is basically TOB voted, it's approved, and next step is just getting the repo created?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was on people's radar since we're doing it. Is there anything on there we want to chat about, considering it's is going to affect some of the Kubernetes stuff? Or is everybody just happy to see that happen?
So that's cool.
I put
It
the
needed to
distribution.
be on the OCI side, so we wouldn't get any recursive, right, dependencies.
I think they wanted to split it out from Run C because what's happening in Run C is they've got extra dependencies and different release timeframes. And so they wanted to make sure they could update the C group specific code and only have that one dependency in there and be able to release it on its own schedule.
Yeah. So I guess we just got to seed it and do some kind of time frame on getting a release out, and then we can go ahead and pull it into the run times, et cetera.
Yeah, it sounded like they wanted to go with like a v0.x initial release and then start to work on getting that merged into different places.
Okay. Did you guys pick maintainers for it?
They did list maintainers in there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a list in a few other.
One of them's there. Akahiro's in the list.
All right.
How are you?
Just for context, for
We're
most
sort of
sitting on
looking
this
at the
side of the
camera
field.
so that Brandon can see us.
Yeah.
If you've got a really good haircut, I don't mind if you're facing the other way.
Lucius?
Oh, you.
I don't think we have a
there's
mic on
room
the
mic,
table.
so anytime you want to.
Oh, the camera guy is zooming out just so he can include you. He's being nice. Hello to the other table. I feel like you're making all these concessions for me and I'm not even there. I'm just here to help run things in case it's needed. So I'll go ahead and say we're probably good on the C group repo discussion. We want to continue forward. I threw distribution spec conformance test on there in case people really want to start digging into that. But I'd kind of rather chat about the Linux network device stuff in there. Since Antonio, you threw that on the agenda, it looked like.
It's your turn, Antonio.
Okay. Well, so there is a long-standing gap in networking in containers that got split into some containers like Pullman and Docker going one way, Kubernetes and Containerd and Cryo doing CNI, and this become like the only way to configure network, right? But there are some use cases that don't need this complexity, right? Just need to put an interface in the container namespace. And this proposal tries to address this problem, right? You have use cases like AIML or some telco stuff that already have the interfaces in the host. And what the user wants is to say the same as you mount a dev USB 0 or dev video 0, you want to say Mellanox 0 or NC4 0 to this container. So what I propose is following the semantics of the character or block devices that are already in the OCI runtime, adapting to the characteristics of the network devices represented in the kernel at the same semantics and behavior, right? So people can specify, I want to use this device that is network device that is in the host, and I want to move it to the container in a declarative way. This will simplify also another abstraction like Kubernetes that they will not need to go through these out-of-band channels to work to solve this, to work around the problem of not having this native integration with the runtimes. And I'm very specific. I know the problems of networking. I've been networking, and I'm very specific. This is about network interfaces with a minimal exposure to avoid the slippery slope of now I want to add routers, that I want to add DNS. This is clearly out of scope, right? This is a very simple, and I think that it's very important to be very simple and very specific and very strict on what this does and what it does not, and is implementing only the basic features. I have a container that is identified by name in the root namespace, and I want to move this to a container to a network namespace. And I added 4 characteristics that I think that are the main important. Is you may be able to rename the interface name because inside the namespace you may have collisions. You may assign an IP address because you may not have it, or the network namespace has different characteristics. The address requires the mask, and then the MTU. And that's basically the proposal. It's the same that we have with device blocks with network interfaces.
Along the same life cycle as existing devices are done, or CDI devices are done.
I'm not familiar with CDI devices. The characteristic of network devices is that
They're at the pod level. Yeah.
they are at the pod level in that case, and the other thing is they follow the life cycle of the namespace. So if the namespace is destroyed, the system clean that or they just return to the root namespace. That is important because this model doesn't leak network interfaces in the system.
So that, if I'm understanding you correctly, there's no cleanup action that a runtime would need to implement in order to get a network device to return back to the root namespace.
So it depends on I really need to look more into this, but my understanding right now is if you have a virtual device as PS or this kind of devices, those are destroyed. They never return back to the network namespace. The other devices, the root devices, I think that they return down as down. So that I need to check on that. I will take a note and I need to confirm. So I need to see what happens and all the use cases and document what happens when the namespace is destroyed and if there is any action that the runtime need to implement. But basically, my experience with the implementing this with another technologies is that is not a problematic action the cleanup. I need to document it. I will update the PR and document the destroy and of these interfaces.
I'm trying to keep silent. Well, the problem is where OCI runtime spec right now is container based and network is pod level thingy. So adding few fields to container and implementing like we're moving the namespace to, well, interface to namespace, assigning addresses is not a big problem. We can do it. The question is what happened if a container for some reason restarted. So without creating the entity of pod or similar like sandbox, whatever we call it, I don't see, well, I see potential corner problems which might arise if we try to add it into container description, not the pod level description. But technically, yes, as you describe it, it's easy. But well, error handling might be a bit problematic.
Can you expand on error handling? I want to get this feedback to try to cover this.
So situation like that, like imagine we have like really simple pod with one single container. So the pod is created, when namespaces are created, container starts. At the first container start, we are injecting the interface from the host. And then suddenly something happened with that container, so it crashed. Kubelet will restart that container. So now we are again getting the OCI spec, which says move me interface from the host to the container namespace. But because the pod namespace was not destroyed, the interface is already there. So we don't have the information about the host because the interface is already in the container namespace. And we have a description which says like, that interface from host needs to be moved where, and we don't know what is already present in the pod namespace is actually what was requested.
Why would this patch the net namespace? Additionally, you have ephemeral containers and things like that, right? They
Well,
get involved in this.
Yeah, but I mean,
Problem
like,
bit, yeah.
let's separate story when you have multiple containers. I'm just talking about like one container which just get restarted. So the interface is already in place, but I have conflicting like new create container spec, which says you need to move the interface, and then host it's already not existing because it's already in the destination.
From the OCI perspective, we don't really have pods, right? OCI is at the container level, and then a pod is a Kubernetes construct on top of that. So the way that most container runtimes are implemented today is we create a pod by the use of another container that is responsible for creating those namespaces. So if you, for example, were to start up a pause container for the pod and specify the network devices for the pause container, then that would be the creation of that network namespace. And subsequent containers don't create a new namespace. They just join the existing one, right? So in this model, I don't know, we wouldn't add a network device to like at the container level. I think if you're thinking about this at the pod, we would add it for the pause container that is responsible for that root for the network namespace of the pod. Right.
Yes, but the problem is what with pause container, there is no way to affect the creation of OCI spec for pause container. So like we don't have in either configuration options. It's not visible in NRI lifecycle. And my understanding, like Antonio, you want to have like this parameterized, like you want to get some parameters from a pod spec, right?
I think
Well, we interface like IP address, you need to get it from somewhere, right? So for each pod, it's most probably you need to get unique address somehow.
I think you're mixing layers of abstraction, right? So at the OCI spec level, right? We don't have pods, we don't have NRI, we don't have Kubernetes, we don't have anything about like how any of these things get created. It's just something somewhere is responsible for creating the bundle that describes what is the container that the underlying OCI runtime is going to create. And this is the level that I think we're talking about today, and the level of abstraction where Antonio is proposing a change. And then the kinds of things that you're concerned about for how do we actually influence the spec, the bundle for the pause container, would then be a discussion that you'd have at like a higher level runtime. So you'd have that discussion in the context of containerd, for example, or in the context of CRI-O rather than in the context of OCI.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was saying,
Yeah.
but in other words. So like technically for one container, yeah, it's easy to implement and easy to add. But the problem will be started when we start to use it.
Yeah, but this is as Samu says. This is a primitive, right? The way that it is, I need a primitive, right? Then we can talk about building abstraction, right? But that's I want to walk this path, right? Is we need a primitive that do this thing, right? I use Docker dash device and attach a device. So I want to use Docker dash net device and attach this device. I see value in that. I see working with Docker before. I see people trying to do that and doing manually, right? Then once we have this primitive, then we move to the next layer. Okay, we want to provide more abstraction. Who are the next stakeholder? Containerd, CRI, right? And then I want to talk the conversation with the Containerd and CRI maintainers and say, look, with this primitive, how do you think that we can glue this together? Once I have agreement for the runtime, is the next level of abstraction is Kubernetes. Okay, the runtimes offer this possibility, right? How do we expose this in Kubernetes? But I don't think that all these paths, one thing is a vision, another thing are the incremental steps. And I think that all the incremental steps are independent and all of them start with the OCR runtime, acknowledging that people can attach a network interface to a container. And that makes sense. I think that,
Yeah, it does a little bit. So when we create a container today, right, it has a network namespace that container is going to be attached to, and we pass it in, or the container network namespace is created because it's in a user namespace by the runtime, and then we receive that back out in the container runtime before we run all the CNI devices. In the second case, I see a case where you might want to say, I want a user namespace with a set of devices, and network devices. In the first case, the network namespace is already being created, and you're saying, and I want to also attach to this container these network devices. I think in both cases, it does sort of make sense that we could have a primitive at that layer they had to be network only devices, and there would have to be some restrictions to be managed by crun. I think this makes sense at that context level. It doesn't help the pod problem, the lifecycle problem of those devices in that container, because when the container goes away and that user namespace goes away, how do you destroy them? We're still going to need some kind of a hooking mechanism that either RunC provides with call outs like we use already today for certain elements and abstractions of the container lifecycle, right? We can do call outs, hooks. We already have built into RunC.
I was just gonna say, like, does it make sense for us to restrict the new netdev field to only containers where they're creating a new network namespace versus containers that are joining an existing network namespace?
Both are good patterns. I was just mentioning both patterns. Yeah.
Actually, what happened, like how a network namespace is in case of Docker Compose? So we don't have pause container, but what, like who
Think
keep?
about the pause container.
No, but I
It's a
mean,
task.
In
No, but
Docker
what-
Compose,
The reason we're building a container, a pause container, is so that we have a task that we can create
Yeah,
devices against. It's not that we needed a container.
my question is, in case of Docker Compose, what
in
is the
Docker-
life cycle of network namespace?
in Docker Compose, there are no pods. So the network namespace is attached to every container individually.
But Docker has a networking.
that's the lib network thing.
Yeah, they have their own like network pluggability, and you can create unique networks and attach containers to them, but that's not part of a pause container or any design like that.
But one of the reasons I wanted to be very specific about this is about network devices, and I'm very focused is because of this. Is well, I know from the networking discussion is everybody will try to hook into this to do other things, and this has strong use cases for that solve real problems, for example, with AIML workloads, right? AIML at the container level, they add depth GPU 0, and then you need to attach a network device there, right? These things work in combo. And this solves this problem day 0. So that's why it's then people will, the conversation of adding more all this complexity of the network life cycle is a different topic that I just want to keep separated for this, because then it's when we enter with CNI, NRI, and I don't think that this is related to this. This is about, I have GPU 0 with Mellanox 0, and I want to be able to create my container with these two things.
Well, my root cause of my first comment was how we handling the errors. Because if we're drawing the parallels to devices in that sense is very simple. So like whatever is written in the spec, nothing verifies what device actually exists. So it just creates the device node inside the container namespace, but is there something behind this device node, like if the kernel supports it or not, nothing verifies that. In case of network device, network interface, the device might not exist for some reason, like, configuration error, whatever. So what we are doing in that scenario, are we failing container creation or we just ignoring that error?
The way I expect it is, so the network devices are identified by name, right? And the way I expect it is you expect an network name, a network interface name, and it doesn't exist, so it is a must. So if you are specifying something and it doesn't exist, the container should not be created.
So
Because I think that the user experience, if I ask for, I've imperatively asked for something, and you don't have that something, and you create a container, as a user, I'm going to have a problem because I may think that you are doing the right thing and you are not doing.
yeah, so when the specification should say what the field host name of interface is mandatory, and if it's not present, the creation of container must fail.
Well, I added a must. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with. I was trying to mimic the other implementation, and I think that's how it's expected in the devices and all this stuff. So I can reward it, but the spirit of what I wrote there is the container runtime must put this interface in the network namespace, and then is how to do it is up to the implementation of the container runtime. I don't want to enter into you should use one or other technology.
This can be used to tighten the life cycle. It can be used to tighten the error issues. It can be used to, this could be useful. It doesn't even break the CNI plugin model at all. It just, yeah. He's registering lists of, using kernel APIs, lists of existing devices, and this could work very well with the DRA stuff we're working with. So I think it's useful to at least experiment. I like it. Only just been looking at it, but I like so far what I'm seeing inside the implementation. Good idea. Always doing good stuff. Yeah, I was having fun. Okay. Have you talked to Zap on this and and Leo?
I was trying to find some. It's here, but I never had time to catch
Okay.
up. We talked about this. I have this issue open for a long time. Never had the time to introduce. I was talking with someone else. Also, I know you, but I really don't know the mechanics of this group. So I was also a bit shy to show up.
I mean, because this is new, I think if we were to add the SPI stuff, for pressure on networks to this kind of our design, working with the cryo team, we're doing that effort together with that and some of these DRA caps we have going. I think this is a nice way, but it would lock us into, an OCI spec and or a run C release. And,
well, actually, look, I'm not in a rush. I have
say.
this problem. I identified this problem. This solve a lot of problems of people trying to do a lot of workarounds, out of band channels, and all the things.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat and pretty simple. That's why I don't think that this should be something to build complex abstraction or routing or this kind of thing. That's another discussion, right?
Yeah.
And well, as I told you, there are specific use cases, telco and AIML, that are doing this today, and you can do Docker dash net device ETH1 run is from the
Is this normalized from an existing, like this, the MTUs here? The maximum transfer unit? This is all from
if you
kernel?
go, I added two links. You go to the strat of the net device strat in the kernel, you
Yeah.
can see the field. So what I'm doing,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah,
okay.
the struct, yeah.
Well,
Do you?
yeah. And no, but go to my pull request.
Oh. Okay.
So there is another that is more visual. There are two links, right?
So,
The one that says the if crack.
no, that's not it.
Okay.
Wow.
This one, the man page or the net device. Man page. Go there and you see the start. Yeah, so basically I just getting the field that are important.
Gotcha.
If name is
Just the standard.
right.
So
So and the
twice.
start is just this one, but it's simplified, just moving the field. We can add more fields, but I didn't want to make the complexity. I think that's the more meaningful. And in the future, has more. No, the man is going to be adding it, so it's not going to be. I don't know how to handle the API possibility, but I think that the starting small is better than the starting with a lot of fields and then having to maintain that.
Donia, would it make sense instead of separate address and mask to have just like fields addresses, so like multiple addresses can be specified?
But that's exactly what we were discussing. If you go to the man page of net device and you see the strat of the if rec, you get the same extractor in the JSON that is here, just removing the fields that you don't want. So that's what I tell is if you have a one-to-one mapping, what the kernel does is I think that simplifies a lot the design and the maintenance of the scene. Because if you start to do different things, then you need to have to do transformation layers, and then you need to start to have all this problematic. Is where you put the additional address, right? I don't know exactly how the kernel manages these multiple addresses, for example.
Well, the question is more like IPv4 versus IPv6.
Yeah, but what I was saying,
Or dual stack, like so, like to have possibility to have multiple IP addresses on the same device.
that's I think that's in the management of the device, right? It's a post creation operation, right? It's once you enter with the routes, with the DNS, with the configuration of addresses of the subnetting, right? I want to completely isolate both life cycles. One is creation, that's out of scope. The other is this container creation and moving to the interface, and then is the post configuration of the interface. And I understand IP address management. What you're saying is a post creation interface, right? There has to be an application that needs to understand about subnetting, about whatever, right? You just are given the capability to provide an interface with an initialization, with that same defaults that you can implement. And then is when the post actions, post configuration enters, but just not in this level of implementation. This is OCI. It gave the device. It's running an application, and now the application take over on the existing device and do whatever they need to do. I'm very strong opinion on that. This should be network interface and nothing else. Because then is when we enter in the network configuration problem, and we have all the networking configuration problems of the world, and we have now overlapping or what is the XCDC is we have 7 standards, now we have 8 standards, right? So I really think that this should be very simple, very basic and the very minimum.
Well, if it's bare minimum, then address and mask at all should not be there. You just like bring the nameless interface to the namespace. Or IP less.
No, you have an IP, right? I want to provide the capability to bootstrap from there, right? The bare minimum is the IP and the mask. Once you have an IP and a mask, you can bootstrap, right? You need something to identify with the other guy. I mean, that's the HCP is out of scope.
No, I'm not talking about DHCP. I'm talking like about like dual stack. So if I have both IPv4 and IPv6, I want to provide like both addresses.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, dual stack is not even a thing. It's just something that is a transition protocol, and that is broken. So I don't think that dual stack should be a goal of supporting anything. You need to bootstrap something, right? You need to provide a network device, and you need to that's the only thing that you need. And then you need to do configuration. You want to do dual stack, you go and do dual stack, right? But for starters, you need to put this interface in the hand of the application that is running in that network namespace. I think that you have what?
Are you only putting the fields there for status, not for push? Not to create a network attached, but actually to get their status?
No, for the
Were you
starters,
passing it? Yeah.
what did you say?
Oh, what do we, so we're gonna add the device
Mm-hmm.
to the container config and along with the net space, network namespace. What do you expect? What are you expecting to be able to configure something? Or you just want to attach to that device?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is
So
for
what's
me.
the point of the status APIs and all that?
Yeah,
Something else or?
no, the one saying is that the point that the container is created just out of the OCI spec or whatever, right? That's a configuration problem of the application running on the container.
Right.
So that's why I want to keep these two things completely separated of each other. So it's you want to do the stack. For me, doing the stack is a transition mechanism. What I say. So that's an action of an operator, not an action of a configuration.
Okay. So we're still going to create them the same way we do today. Network namespace, we're going to do OCI attaches, and we're going to add devices onto the container spec as a mutation so that the runtime will see these are the devices that you're using in this namespace.
Yes, but kernel, when it moves the device into namespace, it cleans up all the IP addresses.
Yes.
So you need to call netlink add address to the device. So it's anyway configuration. And I don't see too much of a difference like you're adding one address or several. And second thing, like what I see in this proposal, IP address is like IPv4 only.
No. It's not. It's.
That's what I didn't understand. Where's he's not doing the config, I didn't think.
Well, it says address or string optional. The IP address of a device within the container, all IPv4 addresses must be expressed yada yada decimal from 0 to 255.
Yeah, and keep going and saying, and all the IPv6 addresses in canonical form based on RPC, blah blah blah.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no, okay. I did the last push this morning. So again, you need to initialize the device, and this is the bare minimum that you need to initialize this network interface, right? It needs an IP and it needs a mask, right? Then once it's initialized, that's what I'm saying is out of the scope of this spec. It's just an operator problem or a configuration problem. So you split this into initialization and configuration, right? I mean, it's technically it's configuring, right? But I don't know if that's the part where we are digressing here. But as I say, the moment that you start to add flexibility is the moment that you start to create the slippery slope, because you say, okay, I'm going to add more addresses, and what masks are added to each other, right? And then when you have multiple addresses, why don't you put DNS too? And then you start doing the cycle of, why don't we use this for network configuration? When saying it's exactly what I'm trying to avoid is we cannot move forward because every time that we try to put something to solve one specific use case, that is, I have this GPU that needs this NIC. I have this telco thing that needs this NIC. We start to put also the configuration problem. So if we are able to compartmentalize the problems, we are able to move forward. We solve 80% of the use cases, and we keep thinking about how to solve the other 20%.
Is this different from CNI or is it the same?
It's completely different. CNI is a different thing.
CNI does,
Technically, it's the same, right? It's moving interfaces, but CNI solves a different problem, right? CNI absorbs the configuration problem, right? CNI knows about DSCP, CNI knows about routes, CNI knows
Right.
how DNS, and this is a different problem. This is a network interface. The network interface happens to have some fields that need to be initialized.
that's not specified in the current CNI library? Or, okay,
I may not understand this. The technical part is doing netlink calls, right?
right.
So you can implement just moving that with doing 2 or 3 netlink calls.
Yeah, I've seen the code where we
Yeah.
essentially
So that's what I'm saying is,
drop loopback a plugin and do it ourselves. So, yeah,
then it's why Ramsey need to adopt CNI or whatever thing that for doing 2 netlink calls.
it was to externalize the network plugins.
And then you start to leak all bring all the complexity to something that is supposed to do only one thing and do it simple, right? And that's the neat part, and why I'm interested in this is because I like the model of Francis, right? You have a spec, you execute on the spec. If you start to add dynamic variables to the spec, then is when you start to have problems, right?
Now I'm understanding the scope. Okay.
Yeah. So and then
So you want more than just devices, you want to move config.
yeah, and that's simple. So that layer is clear and is
The problem is
simple and
if
stable.
they're creating the device links, then they also need, because we're doing it at the pod level, it would only work at the container level where we do an update, where we add an additional network, right?
I don't follow
Two
that.
containers. Same
Yeah.
network namespace, same
Yeah,
devices, same config,
you
For
cannot
sure.
have two devices.
one net namespace,
Yeah,
one net namespace, two containers. How do I specify that in the container spec in OCI? That was what we were talking about earlier. There's no pod spec. There's no set of containers spec
yeah, but that's the neat part. Is why do we care?
because of the life cycle of this network device
Yes,
on that attached to that network namespace
right.
is for a set of containers
No, why?
because it is on a set of containers.
But why?
Because we've always shared the resource, the network resource.
No, but that's the thing is that's why when we move the conversation to the things that we know. I know I don't want to. So the thing is, you have the AIML cases.
You're right.
The better is.
I'm focused only on the pod.
We're moving the conversation to the pod, and this is the thing that I want to cover. Imagine that you have an application that owns the interface, right? It's created and owns the interface, right?
Okay.
If I own the interface, I cannot share with the others.
Okay.
That's the NCCL thing with NVIDIA stuff, right?
I got it.
They get the interface. There are more containers there, and they are not using the other interface.
Right.
There can be problems
That's
of sharing.
in theory, it was decided very early on that we better have one for both scenarios and one way for just a container runtime.
Yeah,
and
but
the other way for a-
what I don't want to leak is the pod abstraction to the container abstraction, right? This is a container that want this interface, and they want this interface. It happens to share with the other. The containers are already sharing in the root namespace. So, I mean, you're moving. It's the same problem in a different namespace.
We could also throw out pod in that context where we're just executing against a network namespace, right, to add these devices. Then we could do that if we had the concept of a set of containers.
So,
OCI specified.
let me ask you one question. How do you do with C groups and with namespaces? There are namespaces fields in the OCI spec, right? And namespaces have the same problem, right? Or there is an RDMA. RDMA, I think that this name is per container, right? But there are several other fields that have the namespace problem, right? How do you deal with that?
I'm not entirely sure what the question, but like you can specify whether you want the namespace to be created or if you want the container to join an existing namespace. And that's the level of control that you get with the runtime spec.
What I'm trying to ask is, right now in this OCI spec, you have fields that are network namespace, right? And those fields already have this problem that we're talking about, right? You have several containers.
Right.
That may reference these fields, but they are going to share the same namespace. So what I'm trying to ask is, do you think that the interfaces will have a different problem that the existing fields have?
I mean, not that existing, no, it's similar. It's a similar problem that you're bringing in.
Okay, then I need.
It is a similar problem.
So this field is just showing where to create the namespace or where to join the namespace. So it's just like joining the process to that namespace and doesn't do anything else.
Say again. I mean, this field doesn't say my proposal. You mean?
No. I'm about with this field what you are referring in OCI spec.
Okay.
Hmm.
No, okay. I now I see my. I wasn't talking about the namespace field. I was talking about the fields that depends on one single namespace. I think that C groups depend on one single namespace, right? So I apologize. I was not talking about the namespace fields that specify where you want to create. I was talking about other fields here in the config spec, right? I think C groups is depends on one namespace, right? So if you have two containers and you have C groups, you are going to have the problem that those C groups need to share the same network namespace. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
asking.
you can specify a C group V2 and we will attach to that, yes.
And
We'll
then
restrict, I guess you could say.
and then you will have this problem, right? In a pod that has one network namespace, you have two containers specifying things that depend on a singleton namespace.
Yes.
What I'm trying to say is that this problem of one thing being namespaced in containers that share the same namespace is also present in another fields that already existing on the OCI spec, and I really want to know
Yeah. How
if,
is that being solved?
yeah, to understand how can I
Figure out
propose.
the deal.
We might get that table.
Oh, we. Okay.
That's right. So, what? Oh, no, it looked like you were leaning in to talk about.
Oh,
C
you
groups
thought
V2.
you were.
Say something. I was hoping you were leaning in to talk about secret V2 implementation, between kubelet, Cray and where we assign it to the container.
Yeah. Or we just split people out, people consider C group to as a reverse reading. So that's a practical kubelet.
Right. So it's similar to the discussion that he's having. He correctly identified that that's similar to when we create a network namespace outside of the container. It's a similar scoping issue.
Yeah, also I see the network is C group B1, the net CRS groups, right? So this is not going to present a new problem. I mean, it's an existing problem. Well, I mean, I see C group network here, right?
There's
And
a slight difference. In the case of the network lifecycle, it's currently being handled at the terminal point of creating a pod. Right? At the very end, the last thing we do when we're creating the pod is we attach create the network namespace and attach to it with, calling CNI add. And then we manage the life cycle of that network device, right? By checking to make sure, okay, we haven't gotten rid of the network namespace yet. And we got an exit on the container. That was the last container. Okay, we're going to stop the pod. At that point, right, when we're going to do the removal, we go ahead and call the down,
yeah,
right, for all those plugins before we kill that network namespace. So that if they did do an allocation of any kind of asynchronous link with the host en route that we don't know about, we don't get a leak of memory, right? Or at worst case, an IP link or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
So, because sometimes when you just kill the network namespace, you don't necessarily lose all of that information that all of those devices create, right? They're just destroyed.
Yeah, but I think that this network device is the life cycle of the container, not the life cycle of the pod.
And that's new.
Okay.
That's
That's
the new part.
yeah, and that's the thing that removes the complexity. Because you only manage the life cycle with the life of the
And when
container.
I say it's new, it's only new in the context of pods.
Exactly.
In the context of regular containers on mobile. My memory serves. Yeah, you're right. It's the same scope. Or it should be. Well, they do have network device attached options. We'd have to check the sequence to see if they ever destroy the container first and then the network devices second.
Well, if I just to follow up, I can do some exercises and document the life cycle and all these things that you say, container versus pods, and improve the documentation or the description in the pull request and then back.
Yeah, I think Zappa's actually got I've worked with him a couple of years back. He did a very detailed flow diagram for the life cycle of network namespace and devices. It would be nice to compare and contrast.
Okay, I will.
So Brandon, you heard me say set of containers. I'm going to keep bringing it up. I think it's important that we try to consider that at the OCI level. Some very basic set of specifications that could be compatible across any orchestrator of a set of containers.
So basically, you're still looking to make the pod spec something that is defined by Kubernetes or something that's defined by OCI in some way.
Yeah, I mean, if the Kubernetes team wanted to promote pod spec across orchestrators, then yes, but I was thinking more of something that was a really small subset of HP type solutions plus Kubernetes that, a subset of really just sets of containers. Things like network namespaces that are shared across, a set of containers, like this discussion led to. If we had a manifest or, just for a set of containers, an index manifest, I guess, that would probably help in this case. And it would map very well to how we do shims today as well. As we're talking about, these namespaces can be specified outside the container. And there is never a discussion about what the context of that outside the container is. Right? So if I want to move these things across clouds or, cluster implementations, it would behoove us to have some way of doing that. Not the least of which, when you start talking about things like CRY-U, right? So I want to freeze, a particular config setup for a set of containers, be able to move them to another implementation. An older version of Kubernetes, for example. What is the the limit on the restrictions for being able to do such things? What's next on the agenda, Big A?
I'm thinking that sounds like a proposal to the TOB that you're putting out there.
Yeah.
Might need to
Correct.
write that up.
A spec for a group of containers would,
Yeah.
would need to be a new project, a new spec.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it would need probably a new manifest.
Yeah, it'd be a completely new thing.
Unless you crammed it at image spec, but
Well, it's not an image in this case, right?
we
could
we've
certainly
crammed
keep
things in image
all
spec
that.
before.
We already have OCI volumes. I'm just saying, right? There is already that, and they were looking for help from us for how do you do that, right? How do we do artifacts? How do we do OCI volumes? It's somewhat related. When you start talking about resources that are shared across the containers, even if they are to different target locations, it's still from the same set of resources, volumes, devices, in this case, network devices.
So you're not talking about a runtime representation of a group of containers, right? Because that wouldn't be image, that would be more similar to runtime spec.
Or similar to one time spec.
Yeah.
Yes. We've been recently talking about pod metadata, right? We need it and it's important and it's wrapped about around not having a spec. We don't have a way to move the stuff. It's not well defined. It's just ad hoc defined in both kubelet and in the container runtimes. But that information that was important to keep the set of containers whole in the life cycle of the set of containers, I think is important to have in a specification. The CRY-U guys were trying to figure it out as well. I mentioned that. Where they're freezing the containers. Oops, what about those shared resources? How do they? Yeah.
Are we about done with this topic then? Should we move on to, I think the only other thing on the agenda, Brandon, was yours, the distribution spec conformance test stuff.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the share to work here. Doubled up myself so I could do the sharing.
No.
Hey, I think it does work. I'm not allowed to share when I'm in the app, but I can share when I log it into the website. So I'm looking at the exact opposite end of everything right now. So we just spent a whole lot of time talking about very low level runtime spec stuff.
Right.
We've had some back and forth on the distribution spec of do we want to completely revamp our conformance test? Are there questions in the room? Okay. So I just kind of threw together a little bit of bullet points of ideas. I've been chewing on this a little bit, but I just kind of want to throw it out there for anybody that has concerns, feedback, just getting bigger audience looking at some of this stuff where if we completely refactored how conformance tests work, the path I'm looking at is instead of having an object defined for each test we want to run, to define a bunch of different kinds of objects that we might want to push and all the different APIs we want to test, and then do like a whole mesh of everything to everything to make sure it all works. And then to more than likely turn this into a workflow of you push an object through and it goes through and does all these things. And the eventual thing at the end is that it cleans itself up. And so we don't separate here all the tests for just doing deletions. And the first step of doing deletions is you push the content and then you have the delete step in there, or you just do the test for the manifest push. And so the first thing, or a manifest pull. And so the first thing you do is a manifest push, make sure the pull works, and then do a delete. And that's one test in there for just the pull operation. I'm chaining them all together, saying let's do everything all end to end. And it's the full life cycle of make sure things are there, make sure we can do all the different various blob APIs, the various manifest APIs, the various pulls, and the deletes in there, one big end to end. And since we've got multiple manifests, multiple blobs, we can work through and test all the different APIs in different ways. So that's high level stuff I'm looking at. I've been chewing on this a little bit. I've got some stuff that I'm in various states of development right now. But for example, the configuration here would have the user able to specify, hey, let me turn on the pull APIs, let me turn on the push, the refers APIs, and they can turn things off as well and say, look, I don't support the delete. Don't even try to run a delete against my registry. Or you can turn deletes off just for tags, but not for blobs and various other states in there. So this is the direction I'm looking at going. And, you know, feel free to throw up objections or concerns as you see fit. A lot of the configuration here, this is all going to load in with either some YAML, or I could do JSON as well if we wanted to include that. YAML just feels easier because YAML is JSON. And then all these things say conformance is pulling it in from the environment. And so it goes through and does an environment variable, and it would look for OCI underscore registry. And if you specify that environment variable, it will override this configuration. But for anybody that's ever had to do the conformance on the distribution today, it's getting more and more fragile as we get tests in there for people saying, well, what if we want to start testing SHA-512? What if we want to start testing artifacts in the refers? A lot of our tests in the past have been very focused on push an object, pull an object, delete an object, query, the listing of the stuff. We didn't have the concept of here are all the different kinds of data we can push to the registry across all the different APIs. Are there distribution folks in the room right now? I might be talking to a completely out of scope request. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's just you.
Okay.
I mean, what you're saying sounds good to me, but I don't have a, I don't think I have a strong say here.
Yeah. If there was someone in here that was running a registry that was just like, oh no, don't do that to me. This would be a good opportunity. The other side that I've seen people ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work on the registry for a while, but I don't, it's been 3 years, so I don't remember, Brandon.
No problem. The other direction I'll take this is I've seen a lot of people asking for image spec conformance. And so I'll move this down a layer of what would it take to test people for image spec conformance. the path I'm thinking is, do we want to have some of these tools that are doing various creations of artifacts, building images, whatnot, output to an OCI layout, or if they push to a registry, we can give them a tool that will just convert that to an OCI layout and validate all the objects they're creating, all the different content, the manifest, whatnot, is valid against the image spec. Is that
Yeah,
something?
that makes a lot of sense to replace the schema checking we had before.
Yeah, we've always got some schema checking in there. I think that's probably going to stay, but we don't have as a way someone can say, run my build tool, output my artifact, and verify with a conformance test that I'm creating OCI conformant content.
Right, we wanted that originally, but the schema was the fallback. Well, I talked to Vincent Batts on that. He had some earlier work on that.
I feel like VBATS just wants to take a vacation from all this OCI stuff, and I get that.
I was
But-
hoping to draw him back in. I miss Vincent.
We all miss Vincent. I'll ping him at some point and see if he's got some time to chat.
Yeah. Saw him 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, all things open. Cool.
He's still very active on Mastodon, so I know he's busy having fun doing stuff. In fact, I think the All Things Open was where I saw him doing a whole lot of posts on Mastodon.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your direction of starting at the base layers and then bringing that over to the distribution spec, for certain checking. That makes sense. So you're thinking a combined set of conformance testing libraries?
So when I jump to image spec, I'm thinking have a completely separate conformance test over on the image spec side. And so if you today go into our conformance webpage, there's a link down here that says, hey, take me to the image spec stuff. And that's just saying, we don't have a process for that. Come back some other day. So I feel like it would be nice if we were to populate this with some kind of tool that people could run against their applications.
Yep.
We've seen the request a few times.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been noodling on it for a little bit. And the path I'm thinking of is get it into an OCI layout and then from there verify it. And whether their tool puts it in an OCI layout or whether we extract it from a registry and move it into an OCI layout, indifferent either way in there. But once we have that, then having that directory on the file system, run our tool against it and just say pass fail.
That makes sense.
Great.
And that's all I got. So I'll turn it back over to you guys having a nice little birds of a feather because there's some good conversation happening in there. There was at least.
3:45, we're out of topics unless anyone's got something they want to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. So I added a new topics. So I'm from device vendor and I want to control the visibility of SysFS related to driver things. So what I found is Kubernetes has Linux security context. So we can configure masked paths that we want to hide some SysFS things. I mean, specific directory or files, but I cannot find proper way to do it without Linux context. So yeah. So what I was thinking about it is writing runc wrapper, like what NVIDIA does it now. And we can eject some masked paths to OCI spec before containerd creating a container. But I'm looking for a better way to inject masked path to OCI spec. Yeah, without having run C wrapper.
I would say this is a bit outside the context of OCI just in general, because in the OCI layer, we take the bundle JSON as a given, right? So that's provided to the runtime already. And your question is more about constructing that OCI bundle and constructing the config file that's in there that specifies what those mask paths are, right?
Yeah, because there is a reason why I bring this question to here, because CDI, yeah, we can use CDI to modify OCI spec. We merged OCI spec and CDI spec, and we throw it to run C.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
But those happen at a higher layer, right? So we don't, as far as I know, we don't do CDI at the run C layer. We do it in the higher level runtime, so like
Mhm.
containerd or cryo.
yeah,
And then run C run C sees the computed config.json file that has all of the modifications done. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit out of scope of like OCI, because we just take that as input rather than modifying it. Speaking, taking off my OCI hat for a second and putting my containerd hat on, the immediate thing that comes to mind for me for this is NRI. Because NRI is a mechanism that we have right now to take in context about a pod, for example,
Mhm.
and mutate the OCI spec that is generated by containerd before it gets passed to run C. And so I think that fits the use case that you're describing right now, where you have
yeah.
like you have a pod that you've described, containerd generates an OCI spec for it, and then invokes the NRI plugin, which has the opportunity to do modifications.
Okay, got it. So now I have two options, having run C wrapper or NRI plugin for that.
Right.
Yeah, got it.
Generally, run C wrapper is a bad idea.
I would agree with Sasha on that.
Please don't. So we have nowadays CDI, for example, where you can do whatever usually people do in web wrappers. We have NRI for most of our fields. If both of those options are not enough to you, speak up.
Yeah, I would say
They're planning on.
Why stop doing it?
yeah, I think
As soon as CDI and NRI, CDI are available, we stop doing it.
I think the run C wrapper is definitely discouraged at this point. So I don't think we support mask path adjustment in NRI today, but it would be like we should add that. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing for us to add to NRI and then to adopt in the container runtimes.
So is it
There, but we do have a way for you to do it with our OCI hooks.
Sorry, which field it was we were talking about?
Mask paths.
Well, we can check.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think it's in there right now, but that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to add.
Native that uses the
the fields that we've already set up to be adjustable. And then there's also the OCI hooks that have been around since the beginning of Run C, or at least week 2 of Run C. And there you can also mutate the specification. Okay, using an OCI hook. If we don't.
OCI spec is read once by Run C. So
Hooks don't mutate.
If the hook is changing something, Run C will not reread it.
So the way that you would do this by a hook is by implementing the masking yourself, not by adjusting the spec. But yeah, I would say that with my containerd hat on, I would rather just add support for this in NRI and then allow that to be a thing that you can just do.
Okay, got it. Understood.
If we run out of agenda item, may I ask one question? So practically the question is, what is the expected timeline to release the new version of a spec? The reason why I'm asking for is because there is one field which was introduced recently, but it's not yet released. And I want to fix this field before release. So I'm just curious, like how much time I have to do it.
So there's 2 parts to that question. The first part is a question for the maintainers of the spec when they want to adopt a new version of it. And the second is once the maintainers decide that they want to adopt a version of the spec, then it has to go out to all of the OCI member companies for ratification. That process is generally not very fast. But we have runtime spec maintainers right here, right? So it's the question for these two.
Well, I was worried what like I saw what Run C 1.2 was released, so I was sort of thinking what like yeah, it's already like when you spec version already tagged and it corresponds to it. But
I don't think the Run C version number corresponds to the spec version number. So the spec version number is going to be independent from the Run C version number, and Run C version number is like what have we done in Run C in terms of feature additions. That
how to then find out which Run C version corresponds to which versions of a spec?
So it has docs/spec performance.md.
Okay.
Sorry, in Run C. So in the Run C repository, there's a docs/spec performance.md, so we can find which browser implements which browser of the runtime spec with any limitation.
Also, Run C has an information command, subcommand.
Run C features command.
Run C feature command, right?
Just to be expand of a field, what I wanted to fix is what recently it was introduced with field which is called nowadays exec CPU affinity.
I knew it was affinity.
Yes, so idea is good. The problem was it was done as a like cutting corner and implemented it only for one particular case for exec. But this feature is usable for like all normal containers. So we need to have it like not only for exec, but all stages of a container.
Sasha, have you opened an issue yet?
It was part of a comments for initial review of that PR, and I promised what I will just open the PR to fix it. But it's again like I didn't have time to do it. I'm asking like how much time I still have to get to it.
Because
They
the
do
current
have a-
way it's set is currently 1.2.1 tentative. So you need to, beat that.
Yeah, what I would say is they do have that
Yeah.
milestone there. So if you open an issue and get them to attach the milestone to that issue, that would make sure that people are aware that they are
Okay.
pending your PR.
Yeah, I'll promise after KubeCon I will try to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I would say even if you can't get a PR out, just open an issue so that it's recorded.
Yeah,
I
the
did.
tricky part, usually the way we handle these, right, is how many open PRs do we have? And there's currently 2 or issues. There's only 2 for 1.2.1, so hurry. Yeah.
The other thing I threw on the agenda here for just discussion topics, I figured there might be a few people in the room that know about it, is the Kubernetes volume mounts of OCI images. I know that's been in work on the Container D side to support some of that. And so I figured if anybody wanted to chat about where that's at, that might be interesting. Mike, you're
Are
looking
there
stunned.
specific like questions or things that you want? Like
You wanna talk about
there,
it?
there's a
just-
cap. There's a pull request in progress in Container D. I think Cryo already merged their support for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else. I mean, maybe we can talk about the cap right now. As far as I know, just supports images and doesn't support artifacts.
Right.
Correct.
But that would be an eventual thing that I think we would want to add support for.
I've seen a lot of people asking for when artifacts are going to come in there, but I was the one person that went into the issue on the KEP and said, hey, can we please stop saying OCI artifacts since we're being very explicit in here that we're only supporting images. So they updated
We
for
are
that.
adding subpaths to these images, right? So that if you wanted to only take a portion of a particular image and copy it to a container, we can do that. Um, we're getting close, I think, to merge. There's just a Windows bug right now on the Container D implementation of the OCI volume support. So we're getting close, but yeah, we have no concept of being able to pull these artifact types without having a config or a header or some way to map the blobs to, are they supposed to be in layer order, or do we need to pull the config and push that in as well? What does it really mean to have an artifact that's mounted as a layer, as it would be if it was an image or a volume? What does it even mean, right? Each of the artifacts need to define that, I think, for themselves, and we would probably need to have some kind of mapping. We could have some standards, but without actually starting to go through these for SBOM, Helm, attestations, that sort of thing, we don't really have a pattern to follow behind. And then, of course, there's the other problem, which is most of the current implementations of artifacts are using some are using your API to pull, the referrers that are pointing to a particular image, and then parse that, right? I don't know if Phil's aware of how Soki does that, or if he wants to talk about it a little bit. Artifacts, how you're handling the lazy pulling index for images in Soki.
Yeah.
In my mind, yeah.
Just a reference, using the references, but it falls back to the
Okay. Okay. Right. So it just pulls the artifact pointing to the image for the index.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And that might be the kind of common pattern for using the refers API as a search mechanism. And then, just really filtering down for the one that we wanted, the right version. If there's multiple.
Once you start going artifacts, and especially once you start adding refers, the complication level of that request gets exponentially more difficult.
Right.
Because right now the support for images is very simple, because you already know what an image is, you already know the format of the layers, you've already got the file system details included in there, the user, the permissions, all that stuff is in the tar. Once you no longer have the tar, you're now rebuilding the file system to mount those individual blobs within the artifact. And once you start talking about refers, you no longer have a single artifact, which that single artifact could have multiple blobs in it. You now potentially have multiple matches for that same media type in the refers API. Do you mount them all?
Exactly.
Do you have to select which one of the lists that you're going to pull in? It gets complicated.
As if the image spec definition in a container spec wasn't complicated enough. Right. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is when you lose that tar metadata, people make assumptions of what they can do when they just want to mount a file. And it's like, well, you need to know the file name. You need to know the directory that's in. You need to know the user that owns it. You need to know the permissions. A lot of these things that you just get out of the box with tar, if you start talking about advanced permissions, SE Linux features and whatnot in there,
Yeah.
things that people don't want to start including out of the box that they just get when they use tar.
Right. That's a good point. What does it mean to be a config when you're mapping? Where is that config going to be? Do we have a default location? Does it even make sense to mount the config inside the container?
Well, there are people that only want to pull a specific layer of the image and mount that. And you might have multiple layers inside that artifact, and they only want the one that's got their one big machine learning model in it, and not all the other metadata.
Not just subpath, but you want subpath for a particular layer 0.
I want sub blob, and so picking which blob to mount within.
Man, okay, I see. That's a good point because they may have particular configurations for each of the layers as opposed to just a file system. Ow.
It got complicated really quick, didn't it, Mike?
Just goes back to the, okay, we're probably going to need each artifact to define the mapping, right? In some kind of config.
I think this is the case where you and I have gone back and forth. You're looking to define all of that within something like Containerd that knows all about every artifact that it can possibly map or mount. I was thinking about going the opposite direction of how can you make a generic specification in Kubernetes that says, here is a generic artifact. Here is how I select which blob to mount. Here is how I specify which path within the volume I want to mount that blob into, and just mount it as an arbitrary file.
Yeah, I'm just calling that the config, but yeah,
Okay.
just looking at it from a different direction, right?
Yeah. And so I'm putting all that within the volume spec, the Kubernetes volume config.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And in that case,
Yeah, we've already
you wouldn't-
successfully edited it for one thing. So for the image ref, sure, why not?
Do you want to change the API for the volume?
They already have.
We've already done a net add of the image ref, and when the image ref is set, the volume path has to be nil.
Yeah, no, now
And
it's
then we
hard. I
s-
mean,
yeah.
this is it's surface, so you can do the changes and breaking changes that you want.
True. It's
Yeah.
I think they wanted to go to beta. They didn't make it. I don't
No,
think. Yeah, it didn't make beta.
No, but it's no better because the Containerd doesn't have, and then if we can end in a situation that you can run a pod and it's going to fail in all the Containerd clusters, and
Yeah.
and that's we don't want that, right?
Right.
We don't want users to figure out why the pods are failing.
Right.
Yeah, I think they'll go to beta once Containerd is there for just image spec, for just mounting images. And I think the idea is when you start mounting artifacts, that would be a whole separate KEP.
Yeah, I suspect we're okay with what we currently have because with respect to an image ref and subpathing, we've already got a very solid understanding of what that is, what an image is. It's the problem is the artifact. We don't really know what an artifact is because it's an ad hoc definition. It's not a actual image that's built on a file system, layers on layers in sequence, right?
And you cannot create this abstraction that then you can get the. I mean, can you hide the complexity from the user and simplify
Yes.
this?
Yeah. In the pod spec, we could probably hide it by saying Helm chart name.
Okay, well, that's great.
I want to mount the Helm chart name because inside of in this particular runtime, it's a VM hosting environment, and he's going to actually build the Helm chart. A bad example, but we could also, if somebody wanted to have a portion of an SBOM, that they have to do some testing inside of the container to be able to do some banking type scenario, right?
Give you other examples. WASM would be an easy one. You might have a WASM runtime that's running a container and it wants to mount the actual WASM binaries, or you might have a machine learning model and the model itself is distributed as an artifact and they want to mount that into whatever the runtime is for that model. But there are two different directions you can go when you start to go with artifacts. You can go the direction you're thinking of, Mike, to say, let me learn about every possible artifact that I want to mount and get that specified somehow in Kubernetes inside of, so this is how I mount the
within some
Helm
specified
artifact.
language, within a specified language. And you're saying
Here's how I
we'll
mount the
start
Helm
with specified
artifact.
language.
Here's how I mount the WASM artifact. Here's how I mount the machine learning model artifact. Every one of those would be a different, extension into the volume spec. The path I'm going is completely opposite.
You're starting from the standardized set of options that each artifact should have to fit to.
I'm going the complete opposite direction of saying, let's not try to specify that and get all that defined inside of Kubernetes and, push that kind of requirement potentially down to the Containerd as well. I'm saying let's completely push all those requirements back to the user. And the user has to say, here is my generic artifact, and it's on them to provide all the details to the volume mount command of how to mount that artifact in there. And
When you
so
say
all
user, are you talking about the artifact owner or artifact type owner?
the user is specifying in the configuration of the volume mount, here is exactly how to mount this artifact. And it's up to them to pass all the different metadata that you would need to mount it.
I don't understand. Okay, I mean, I understand, but it sounds beyond the pod spec user.
It's the challenge is if you try to specify every kind of artifact in there, you're going to have a never ending list of users coming to you saying, I invented a new artifact. Now you need to mount it.
Oh, no. What I mean is there would be somewhere a registry of types.
What we usually do in Kubernetes is to have this kind of subdomain slash whatever, right? So you are helm dot whatever.io slash artifact whatever, right? And you create this indirection, and then everybody handles their own thing. So you that's how typically you do with some in all the things. You have this format. And
So do I.
Like the device, like how we handle.
yeah, with
devices.
NVIDIA, right? It's
Yeah.
NVIDIA dot whatever GPU 0.
Right.
So is Brandon's cat picture volume going to be allowed into that list?
I didn't hear her.
What'd you say?
Say again?
I'm throwing my ephemeral the constant example that we go back to for the artifacts, which is cat pictures. And so would I be able to have my special cat picture artifact registered in that list? Because anytime you have some kind of registration out there, users are going to have another artifact every day. It's going to be a different one that comes out every day, every week from all these different people that are implementing it. It's constant, and we don't know the full list.
Diana, right?
Yeah, we do not know the full list of all the artifacts people are pushing to registries.
But if we had a set of standard ways to configure being able to mount different portions as you were proposing, right, then they could specify that and we would just have to pull it. Is that right? Or what? How do you want to do it?
I'm thinking inside of the volume mount, you would say mount layer with this media. The first layer that matches this media type.
You want a specific referencing of the current contents of an image manifest that's specified as an artifact. Okay.
Yeah, I'm mounting this artifact. Pull this layer with this media type, and it might be the first match in there. Maybe
Okay.
they have multiple layers in there. Mount it with this file name. Override the permissions with these users and these permissions. Have each of those as a detail that they can specify, and you just include sensible defaults if they don't specify it. You mount the first one in
Right.
there. You mount as root.
And that would be recursive over sub manifest definitions. And the complexity.
I haven't
gets-
touched refers. Haven't
The
even touched
complexity
refers.
gets heavy.
I'm afraid of that.
Okay.
All right. I
Well, you
see
could
people.
certainly set it up as an annotation that way.
Yeah.
You could literally define a language in an annotation and then pass that down to a plugin to do the map.
Yeah. As folks
We
are
could do
running off, I
that.
want to leave this as like a networking session here, and we can chat more on this, Mike, if we want to. But I
Okay.
want to give you time in the room for folks face to face to be able to
Yes,
socialize.
usually the APIs in the pod spec aren't that complex.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but they don't have to handle every possible media type in the world.
right. Yep. Yeah, it's a classic operating system problem as well. Which may be an alternative is just to pass it down to a lower level.
It
How
It
how
could
you
be that
solve
you
this
have-
if you wanted to be able to enact a device that used one of these artifact types? What would you do in that case? If it was a device model. Right.
It could be that you have templates for standard how to mount certain kinds of artifacts, and someone says, "Hey, use the Helm specification where you're mounting this stuff," and then people are allowed
Right.
to go in there and make their own if they need to.
See you, Phil.
See you, Phil.
It's 4 o'clock already.
I think we're losing people.
Yep, we're losing,
Brandon,
we've hit
so-
the end.
We are. I'm happy to turn this over into networking in the room, or if people need to run off and get to the next session, I don't mind
Yeah.
cutting out early.
Cool. I think we're about done then.
Awesome.
Thanks for being the guy on the video phone there.
I always get to be the face on the big screen, and one of these days I'll be the face in the room. I've done it a few times, but not enough.
Mhm.
All right, Brandon.
All right. I will go ahead and end this for everybody, and looking forward to seeing folks on the weekly meeting, not this week, but next week, and enjoy the rest of the event over there.
All right, man. See you, Brandon.
Cool. See ya.